So how about we bring in Joe? He, him
Hey,
pronouns
Joe.
from Texas.
Oh, hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
What can we do for you, Joe?
So I guess I'm supposed to ask a question or something, or...
I mean,
Do you have a
can. Generally, we're looking for people to defend what their beliefs are, but if you have a question, go for it.
Okay, well, I was told to bring a question with me, but I have beliefs that I will defend. I don't want to try and run the show.
Well, it says here you wanted to ask if we've ever prayed.
Yeah,
Are you there?
I'm here. Yeah, I guess I'm just curious if you ever bothered pray, if you did you have anything noteworthy happen at all?
Yeah, so I'll give you the 30-second thing. I walked down the aisle at a revival at the age of 5 at the Gashland Baptist Church in Gashland, Missouri, and accepted Jesus into my heart. I was active in the church all the way up through my teen years. The people in my church thought God wanted me to be a preacher. My mom thought God wanted me to be a preacher. I have prayed, I have praised, I have sang, I have been convinced that I was filled with the Holy Spirit, and then also convinced that I was not, and was studying to be a minister when I found out that I didn't have good reason for any of my beliefs. So I'm a former Southern Baptist, occasional Pentecostally Christian who is now an atheist. Aaron, have you prayed?
I'll do an even faster one. Did I pray? Yes, I was Catholic. Did anything special happen? No. Did I have excuses for why those special things happened or didn't happen? Yes. Do I believe that anything special was going to happen? No, because now I'm an atheist, and I think I was ultimately talking to myself.
Oh, this all sounds quite reasonable. I grew up in a Baptist environment as well, so I understand the environment.
And for me, in the Southern Baptist realm, they have something, or my churches did. I won't say they, because there's a lot of different Baptists, and not all of them are Southern Baptists, and not all of them work the same way. But I went to summer camp at Camp Windermere in Lake of the Ozarks. And it's not quite like the movie Jesus Camp, but it was close. We didn't actually have pictures of the president to pray over. But I'll just let you continue. I don't need to retell my story. I just posted a video.
Okay, well, so in all the times that you bothered to pray, there wasn't like anything that was like teetering on the edge of supernatural, or even like caught your attention, you think? Or
Well, I thought there was plenty of times, and then I realized I didn't have any justification for concluding it was supernatural. I have prayed and praised and felt at peace and felt elation and felt euphoria. And when I was a believer, all the people around me would say, "Oh, that's the Holy Spirit." And so then I believed it was supernatural, and then I found out that conclusion isn't warranted. So yes, I used to believe that, and now I don't.
Okay. I guess my personal belief, I grew up in a Baptist environment. It was pretty a lot to take in as a child. A lot of people telling me I'm going to go to hell if this or if that. A lot of talk about hell. And I had a lot of dreams about hell as a kid. And by the time I was about 14 years old, I remember I just woke up one day and I was just like, this is all just BS. And it was like, I didn't even have to fight it. It just like fell off of me. And I let it all go. And then, I guess you could say I was like an atheist by that point. But recently I prayed, and I actually thought I got a result out of it. But I don't know if it was just me connecting dots or if anything actually like noteworthy was happening. And now I find myself almost like falling back into the trap of religion or a belief in God. I think that there is a supernatural, or I don't know if supernatural is the correct word, but I do think there is a force that humans can interact with that maybe has the ability to manipulate the physical world, but I'm not.
So,
I don't
Joe, when
personally
it
think
comes
there's a
to there
character.
being such a force out there, and I'm not saying force just to again bring in another Star Wars reference, but you're worried that your prayer being answered might just be your own attempt to make it work. So, what could we do to actually show
Yeah.
objectively if prayer helps or not?
Well, that's actually. I think that's a great question, and there is a group of people that are studying.
Templeton Foundation.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
You're talking about the Templeton Foundation? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted, but
Oh, you're fine. No, it's I wish I knew the name right off the top of my head. It's something like the Field of Noetics or something. I'm going to look it up on my phone while I talk, so if I can cite it. But it's basically a group of people they will tell somebody to sit in a lab environment and tell them to project a certain thought or idea at somebody else, but purely in their own head.
This
And then they
sounds like
see if anything
psychical
happens.
research. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, this sounds
exactly.
like an extension of like the Society of Psychical Research, which has been around since like the 19th century. And of the various attempts at showing supernatural things, how many of them have actually passed skeptical review after over 100 years of attempting? And I can count how many examples have succeeded on my hand. And if you are watching the video, you'll see I'm showing a fist.
Oh,
yeah, it's
well.
So I was actually talking about the Templeton Foundation because the Templeton Foundation is actually sponsored by religious believers who continue to sponsor studies into the effectiveness of religion, the effectiveness of prayer. And so they specifically did a study on intercessory prayer, where someone is ill, recovering from surgery, and they ask people to pray for them. And the groups that they set up were people who were prayed for and knew they were being prayed for, a group that were being prayed for but did not know they were being prayed for, and people who were not prayed for. And the group that did the worst were the ones that were prayed for and knew they were being prayed for. So the speculation is that that they performed worse than chance because they felt some pressure, oh, they're praying for me, I better get better. But overall, whether you were being prayed for or not, did not impact. It had no more effectiveness than flipping a coin as to, is it pretty much just a coin toss. So there's no effective demonstration there. That doesn't mean prayer doesn't work, and it doesn't mean intercessory prayer doesn't work. It just means that they developed a test to try to do this, and it didn't work. And the Southern Baptist in me was like, thou shalt not put the Lord thy God to the test. And it's like, oh, prayer works until you're actually studying it or you know about it. But the reality is, if you said that you recently or not too long ago prayed and you thought you got a result out of it.
Right. Yes.
I wonder, like, if I'm testing something, I pretty much know if I got a result or not. And if that's prayer,
right,
I would know. I mean, maybe it's one of those cases where I prayed for something to happen and then it happened. And now I'm doubting, oh, was that answered prayer, or would it have happened even if I didn't pray? Is that the kind of thing?
Okay. I can just tell you exactly what happened, and
sure,
we can just judge it. So
it's fine. I don't like to pry unless I have to.
It's perfectly acceptable. So basically, I was like, I'm 24. I was looking for a job, and I've been like door dashing like full time. I was just looking for a job, and so I just was like, I just prayed one day. I was just like, please help me find a job. And then like literally like the next day, somebody who I hadn't talked to in like years called my phone and was like, "Oh, I butt dialed you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And they're like, "Hey, do you want a job? Like, I need somebody to work for me." And I was like, "What the hell?" So then I went in to look at this job. It was like a vape store. He wanted me to like manage the vape store. And then like I was like, I don't know if I want to sell people like things that are gonna like destroy their body. And so then I prayed and I asked, should I take this job or should I leave it? And then I went on a walk like 30 minutes later and I found this like disgusting vape that was like destroyed on my walk. And I've gone on this walk route like literally like hundreds of times in my life. And I've never found like a vape. But this time I found that vape. And I thought, to me, I feel like I totally could have made this up. I feel like it was symbolizing like that job might not be for you. So the whole thing, it just sounds so ridiculous. But I think if somebody prays, they're kind of setting themselves up to connect dots, I guess.
And that's probably the case because you
that.
mentioned seeing a vape on the ground, and those vapes were probably there, but you don't notice things unless you're perhaps thinking about them. Like if I mention
Exactly.
a red Buick, you probably haven't seen a red Buick in a long time, but now the next time a red car goes by and you think it might have been a Buick, you're going to be like, oh, wow, that Aaron person on the line is a prophet. But no, it's just that I've now made you think about it, and now you're more likely to go out and notice it. And yeah, vapes are just everywhere. I used to teach high school, and the vaping problem has gotten pretty bad in that environment. So I would be just walking the halls and just all of a sudden noticing, oh, I just kicked more vape cartridges from the kids. So, and this was a decent high school. This wasn't like a really problematic group or anything. It's just that it's just so dang common. So yeah, those things were probably there, but now just because it was so deeply in your mind, you were more likely to notice it. And ultimately, you were conflicted about working the place, and it just personally confirmed to you that, hey, I don't want to do this. And I know that feeling too. Just to give also some personal backstory for me. I used to work at a 7-Eleven. I did that for summers once or twice. And I remember feeling terrible afterwards because the thing I remember selling more than anything was hard liquor, lottery tickets, and cigarettes. And I realized the people coming in and getting this are the people who definitely don't need this and is probably hurting them financially, let alone socially. And it felt bad selling that sort of stuff every day. That got to me after a while.
This is so wild. I'm literally at the top of my work list for videos right now is a video talking about this, the Bader-Meinhof effect, that the frequency, there's a cognitive bias that occurs once you learn about something new or encounter something new, and then you start seeing it everywhere. It's got a number of different names. I think frequency illusion and other things like that. But I already started working on a video on this. The interesting thing for me, Joe, is that, well, I'm not going to get into, hey, I don't want to sell vapes that, might be doing harm to people. Cool. I've had people, I haven't had anybody butt dial me and say, do you want a job, when I was actually needing a job? But of all the times where that could have happened, since it never did for me, if it had happened once, wouldn't I have to consider that and compare it to every other day that I really needed a job and didn't have one, where I wasn't butt dialed and offered a job?
This is a perfectly valid point that must be considered. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I've been door dashing for an extremely long amount of time now. And I would love to just have a job that I could just go in and make a decent wage at. And I've applied to hundreds of jobs, and yeah, I mean,
roughly where in Texas are you?
I'm in North Dallas. Yeah, I'm just north of Dallas in the suburbs.
Let's try an experiment. Why don't you email me, Joe? My email
Okay.
is sans.deity@gmail.com. sans.deity@gmail.com. It's already out there. It's public.
Okay.
If anybody watching this in North Dallas has a job that Joe could potentially get, you feel free to email me and I'll connect you. Outside of DoorDash, Joe, without giving like a full resume, where does your skill set rest?
Oh, I have a lot of. I appreciate that a lot, man. I have a lot of experience doing delivery stuff. I did delivery driving for a few years, and I have a lot of experience in like pizza places and restaurants. That's basically the vast majority of my work experience.
If somebody has a job like that and wouldn't mind giving Joe a shot and you're in the North Dallas area, cool. But here's the weirdness that I want to get back to, Joe, and that is if I'm imagining that I was still a Southern Baptist, or if I had, given up for a while, but I reached out and prayed again. And if I prayed, God, I really need a job, which, by the way, I did. I'm an atheist in part because I lost a job for doing it too well. And I spent a year and a half completely unemployed, burning through my life savings, trying to find a new job. And I was a lead engineer for Dell workstation motherboard testing. And I was specifically looking in areas that were comparable. I didn't go down and apply at the gas station because I wanted to stay in that tech industry. But if I had prayed, God, I really need a job, and the next day a friend butt dialed me and said, hey, would you like a job doing something you absolutely hate and despise and think God might be opposed to? I couldn't possibly consider that answered prayer. Why would God send somebody to ask me to do something that I think God might be opposed to?
Well, you see, this is why I'm not so confident that there's a character. But I this sounds so silly, but I really actually think this. I think humans have and I don't think it's supernatural. I think it probably can be physically explained. And you know what? I'll call back when I actually have compiled a list of scientific evidence to support what I'm saying. Because I'm sorry, I don't have the studies from the field of noetics with me today. But I really think that humans. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out if you had good reason to think that what the noetics people were doing was actual science.
Well, I'll look into it a little more, and I'll see if,
because if it's something like the Institute of Noetic Sciences,
I do think that humans have a connection to. I don't know how to put it so well defined, but I think humans might have some sort of connection either to the future or maybe just towards each other on a very, very small level. And I think this also might be true for other animals. This might not just be like a human thing. I might just be totally talking out of my butt, and I just have no idea what I'm saying. But
you're not saying it is the case. You're saying that you think it might be the case. I have no reason to think that something like that is even possible, let alone real. And so, as a skeptic, when I'm looking into people like the Institute for Noetic Sciences, they put science in their name, but I'm not convinced they're actually doing science. I don't want to disparage them because I don't necessarily know which organization has done what. But I have yet to run across an actual scientific organization studying the paranormal and things like that who have scientifically demonstrated any good reason to believe any of it. Not remote viewing, not astral projection, not telekinesis, not telepathy. I mean, it's not difficult to come up with a test protocol to see if humans are able to communicate telepathically. I mean, the James Randi Educational Foundation used to have $1 million prize. People would apply for it. There were people who applied thinking that they could engage in telepathy, and they would develop a test protocol, and nobody was ever able to pass it. And so it would seem to me that in all the years, I mean, granted, we're not going back 1,000 years, but in all the years that we've been doing science and exploring all the parapsychology claims, all of the pseudoscientific claims is how we end up getting labeled, all the proposed supernatural, none of them have demonstrated any efficacy at all. And there's not a scientific journal on the planet that has come out and said, you know what, we can communicate telepathically or anything like that. And so these research institutes that are investigating it, I think we need to be dubious. If they present well-documented test methodology of their research and shows that it has results, then we should definitely take it serious. But definitely don't get your hopes up just because an organization sounds science-y or has science in their name.
Yes, this is all well and true. I do know of one other source of quote unquote, I guess you could call it a connection to the future, if that's a reasonable thing to say. I don't know if you take this person very seriously at all. You may not. But there's a dead psychologist by the name of Carl Jung, who laid out some very interesting ideas about how humans act in a collective context. I think he pointed out some things that are quite observable right now in America and everywhere. And he claimed to have quite a number of experiences that were that you would call paranormal, things that would not be regularly explainable. Was he a schizophrenic crazy person? That's absolutely possible. And it just taking somebody at their word is really not valuable.
I don't need
really the science is what. Yeah.
Sorry, Joe. It doesn't matter to me whether or not he was, what his mental state was or anything else. The only thing that matters to me is was Jung able to present evidence of the collective unconsciousness? And the answer is no. And I hope you're not listening to
I think it's actually
he was what?
That it exists, that the collective unconscious exists. I think
you are wrong. You are wrong you are wrong if you're saying it's just a fact that the collective unconsciousness exists. That has never been demonstrated.
Well, I think you can you can come to it as a logical conclusion. I don't know if you want to listen to me talk anymore.
No, because it's starting to sound like you've been listening to Jordan Peterson and others, and I have zero respect for him.
That fool. I think I can't stand him.
I get it, but what is the scientific evidence that was presented to confirm Jung's collective unconscious?
Okay, I think I can demonstrate. So Jung basically said that humans have a level of consciousness, and then outside
I don't know what
of
that means.
Okay, so like you and I, and I assume that you are conscious, but I don't actually know that for a fact. But I do assume, we'll just assume it, if that's acceptable.
Well, if we assume that we cannot, that solipsistic claims aren't true, if we assume that you and I share a reality and that the reality is real, then you can demonstrate whether or not I am conscious.
Okay, well, at the very least, I know that I have a level of consciousness. I have the ability to hear noise. I can see things with my eyes. I can see, and so there is that is peripheral and there is a range that ends at, and beyond that range is just simply defined as unconscious, because that's exactly what it is. It's not inside of my field of consciousness. I can think about
Are dead people unconscious?
And I actually don't know.
Well, do they have a consciousness that's the same level as yours?
I mean, my assumption is that they're not conscious, but I actually don't even know. I mean,
yeah. How would you find out?
Well, I don't think I can find out ever. The only consciousness that I'm ever fully certain of is my own.
And so isn't that also true for Jung under these circumstances?
Yes.
Okay. And so if none of us can be confident of any consciousness other than our own, then it's not testable or falsifiable for us to verify whether or not there's a collective unconscious.
You are correct that even though I have my own field of consciousness, for all I know, you could be all-knowing and you could not have an unconscious. But I do take the assumption that this is not correct, that you do have there is a level of unconsciousness to you.
I'm completely lost. Aaron, have you got something on this?
The only thing I can point to a little bit about this is because I've read extremely little of Jung, but I have read more of one of his most famous influence figures. How did the name just all of a sudden drop? Joseph Campbell, Here with a Thousand Faces. It was basically his application of Jungian theory on mythology. Right. And while the work was influential, including on Star Wars, which again I will keep bringing up today. The problem is the ideas that was being pushed there, this monomyth that seems to be this sort of human universal, is now not accepted by mythologists, that this doesn't seem to actually be the case. And it was mythology that Jung used in particular to try to argue that there's this collective unconscious, then why the same patterns were showing up across humans around the world. And that pattern doesn't seem to actually be all that well found when you look at the evidence more holistically. The problem with the Hero of a Thousand Faces was that if you look at a variance of a myth and you pick out the parts you like, that yes, then you'll see the pattern. And if you ignore all the misses and keep all the hits, that now it looks like there's this amazing pattern all over the world. And has been the main criticism about Campbell's work, which was derivative of Jung. So with my scant knowledge of these things, it seems that a collective unconsciousness is not justified by that means, and whatever things are similar can also be explained by just we're in the same environment. So, for example, we all have families. So having myths about families doesn't seem requiring something supernatural, for example.
Yeah, the thing I used to say is that
I'm not trying to say anything supernatural at all. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. There's a delay.
All I'm saying is, and of course, it is undeniable that we can't actually prove any level of consciousness beyond ourselves ever. But I think I personally assume that when I'm talking to the cashier at a store, that they're actually conscious and real, experiencing. I think I'm okay with making that assumption in an argumentative context. There is always a level of unconsciousness, even in our most wakeful moments. And so if we went back, maybe 2,000 years or less, then just about the entire human race, or really the entire human race, would be unconscious of the fact that they're living on a sphere. And so that would be a part of the constellation of unconsciousness. So and if everybody is unconscious of that fact, then by that nature, it is part of the collective unconscious. And so that's all. That's how I view the collective unconscious. It's just a way of defining the fact that there are things that multiple people can be unconscious of at the same time. And when these things become more specific, like say in a religion or in a pattern of some sort, then the people exhibit the pattern in a collective context because they're all unconscious of the same thing. I don't think there's anything supernatural about that, or at least I assume, I don't think there is. That's what I think the collective unconscious is. I don't think I'm misrepresenting Jung. I hope I'm not.
I don't know enough to say, especially because even a modern Jungian follower of his psychoanalysis might define things differently than Jung himself did. So I just don't know enough to say what's right or wrong. Just, I think we agree that there's at least nothing that justifies some sort of supernatural, superhuman conscious ether. At least we can't show that at this time, irrespective of what Jung himself may have thought.
I mean, we're certain. Yeah, that. I guess that's just an impossible thing to scientifically represent right now. Would be just the simple fact of consciousness of anything. We even though I'm conscious, I can't display it in any sort of scientific context.
Well, Joe, I think we might be at the limit of what we can talk about then if we're basically at the point saying we can't show much. But I hope you found the conversation helpful. And listeners, hopefully you also heard earlier, if you possibly have some work for Joe, contact Matt. He loves getting emails about these sorts of things.
Cool. I appreciate that so much. I'm sorry to bore your pants off, y'all. Thanks for being so kind, y'all. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, I think there's a problem when we start saying, oh, I'm not saying it's supernatural, but there's evidence that the phenomenon is there. And, you know, what I used to say with regard to Joseph Campbell and the myth thing is, or even why we're seeing beyond obvious myths, but religious claims that are similar, we're similar creatures facing similar issues with similar problem-solving skills. And so if the question is, why does the sun rise in the east and set in the west? We don't know. The scope of answers is already narrowed because of the problem. Then it's narrowed further based on what we know and understand and what sorts of things have provided reliable answers in the past. And so I don't understand how it could be remotely surprising in a world with billions that some people are going to come up with similar answers to stuff. And occasionally it'd be miraculous if we never had a moment where two people connected in some way that could be misunderstood. That would be miraculous.
And like a subscriber, Jimmy will have to go on a polyamorous dating show to win some prize money.
Wait, I want to do that. So also hit like and subscribe, and then go to patreon.com/calltheline. I was trying to make you laugh and ruin the take. That's why that silly face earlier. If I was on a polyamorous dating show, I would just choose everybody. Except Frederick. Leave a comment.